And this is the part of the program where we dig a bit deeper behind the headlines with our guest analysts, who we invite to help us explore the stories and issues of the day. And today we have a Rise News analyst and former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper, Mr. Mahmud Jega. Mr. Jega, thank you for joining us.
Dr. Constance, thank you very much.
So you've been listening. What are your initial thoughts? It's 10 years now.
As Dr. Ezekwesili said, the abduction of the Chibok girls was one of the most traumatic events in the recent history of Nigeria. It traumatized everybody, not only in Nigeria, but even internationally. But worse than that, it turned out to be like a signpost of what will subsequently happen. Like the kidnap of school children subsequently became so rampant in many states. Dapchi, Greenfield Academy, the Baptist Academy, the Kuriga was the most recent, but before that there was Kagara, there was the Agric Mechanization School, there was the Kankara in Katsina, there was the Tegina in Niger, there was the Jengebe School for girls in Zamfara. So it became so common, and let me not forget the Federal Government Girls College Yauri school girls in my native state. All those things happened. Some ended a bit better in the sense that the children were able to come back, whether ransom was paid, whether it was a combination of military pressure. But the oldest of them, which is the Dapchi, which is the Chibok, is still hanging. Nearly 100 girls are yet to return home. We are not even sure some of them may not be alive anymore, because you can't live in that bush with all the hazards and also military operations and war going on. There could be some casualties. We don't pray for that. And like
Mrs. Obi said, the parents do not have closure because they don't know.
Of course, because you see, to have closure, at the minimum, you should see the remains of your child. Even if the child is dead, you have to see the remains before you can have a closure. Like some of the recent events that happened, like in Delta or in some other places. Okay, if the security agencies are able to retrieve the bodies and you come and do a funeral, then there will be some kind of closure. You know that this person is dead. All of us will die. But at the minimum, let me see. But this is the worst thing that can happen. That your child was abducted 10 years ago, and up to now, no information. You are not sure whether the child is alive or dead, or where she is, or in what condition. I can't imagine a human tragedy worse than that for a parent, honestly.
You are from Kebbi State,
yes,
and you know the North very well. How much of a setback is this? Whether it was Chibok and every other kidnapping, well, it's an industry now. How much of a setback is it for education in northern Nigeria?
It's not just education, of course, specifically for education, because there is no doubt that given what has happened, many parents are reluctant to send their children to school, although it is not just girls, because even boys were, yes, like this Kuriga school children in Kaduna, small primary school pupils, both males and females, were hidden and were carried to Zamfara State. So you wonder, 200 plus, or later on they said it's 137. How were they carried? Was it motorcycles? Was it vehicles? So the kidnapping business, you see, for many years in the 70s and 80s, we thought in Nigeria we had a terrible problem of armed robbery. But when the kidnappers came along, we realized that the armed robbers were much better. You stop you on the highway, collect everything you have, and you start going. Or they will enter your house. But this is the worst. People who in their lives had never earned 10,000, 20,000 naira, they now sit majestically, use the phone, call family and say, Initially, they started with small amounts, 500,000, 1 million, 2 million. Now, they are even mentioning billions. When they took the Kuriga school children, they are mentioning billions.
In many instances, people in the community know these people. So, I'd like to ask you, do you think the northern governors are doing enough? And what should they even be doing?
Well, it is fair to say that all the security agencies in Nigeria are federal. The military, the police, the intelligence agencies, even civil defense, custom, prison, immigration, all of them are federal. So to that extent, most of the responsibility for securing the country is primarily a federal responsibility.
Correct.
But in fairness to the state governments, more recently, some of them out of desperation, they have created all kinds of agencies. Like, for example, in Zamfara State, not too long ago, they created, I think, what they call community guards. I think they also did the same in Katsina. But those new agencies cannot really stand up to the bandits. They do have an advantage over the security agencies because they are local guys, so at least they have knowledge. They even know, in many cases, some of the bandits and where they come from. But the bandits are very heavily armed. As we see when the police capture them, they talk about AK-47 and AK-49. Then how can you combat them with sticks and machetes and other things? So there is a limit to what the state governments can do physically in terms of physical protection, even though there are many other things they can do, the non-kinetic measures that the government talks about. Certainly the state governments and the local governments and the traditional communities can help in that direction better than the federal government because they are on the ground and they know the communities better.
But are they doing that? Are they doing it? Give an instance. Your state, Kebbi, when was the last time you went home? What's the situation there?
Well, in Kebbi State, only the southern part of the state suffered mostly from the insurgency problem. There are some parts of Zulu Emirate which are contiguous to Zamfara State. And of course, the bandits, they don't recognize political boundaries. That area, it is forested, it is rugged with a lot of mountains and other things. So it is that part of Kebbi State, in say parts of Zulu area, that was particularly bedeviled by the bandits. And the Yauri is not far from there. That was how they came and abducted the Yauri school girls. But otherwise, most of Kebbi State is not bedeviled by banditry. Whether it's due to the actions of the state government or due to sheer luck or the nature of the terrain, I cannot really say. But for now, most of Kebbi State is safe from banditry.
But, you know, at the federal level, we do know, yes, which you mentioned, that the federal government is in charge of security. Is the federal government taking any of this seriously? I mean, they're having at times here and there. But, like Mrs. Obi said, there is a will, a political will, or, you know, there are actions that you take that shows that you will not condone certain things. It's but true. if you don't, then it's a free-for-all, which is what it looks like.
It's true. When you have a problem like this, with insurgency and with banditry and everything, honestly, a government should drop everything else until it solves that problem. All your resources, human and material, and the concentrated minds of the political leaders should go to that. Look, in many parts of the north now, you can't farm. The bandits have driven people away from the farms. One problem will lead to another. That's why I say it was not just education. 70 to 80% of the adult population is engaged in farming. If people cannot go to the farms, people cannot rear cattle, and people are afraid to travel to trade or engage in commerce. That is why you see so many rural boys powering into the cities. They come into the cities, they have no special skills for urban life, so the only option is criminality. Then we now begin to say, even Abuja is not safe. Even Abuja is not. How can Abuja be safe when most of the other places are suffering from banditry and all this violence?
It's a good point you made, because here in Abuja now, within the last 3 years, there are so many people on the streets begging, young able-bodied men and women, we obviously are arriving from all of these states. So it's a huge problem.
It's a huge problem. We are all linked together. There is no visa for entering Abuja. So if you can't farm in Zamfara or in Niger or in other states, you just jump into a vehicle, you arrive in Abuja, and you come and find, okay, glittering buildings, but there is nothing you can do to get money there, apart from probably stealing or some other. That's why we have this problem. They are all linked together.
So there are all kinds of names that are used. Some say bandits. Are you in the school of thought that believes that we should just call this pure terrorism, including the invasion from outside the country, because not everyone that is involved in this is from Nigeria. Some are also coming from outside the country.
Well, whether they are coming from Nigeria or from outside Nigeria, the important thing is to deal with them and to stop this problem. We had that argument over the years about whether they are bandits or they are terrorists. Okay, you see, truly there is some demarcation between Boko Haram and the Northwestern bandits, in the sense that Boko Haram has a political agenda and also a clear leadership. They have a leadership and they have a stated political purpose, which is to capture as much territory if possible, the whole country, and turn it into an Islamic caliphate. But the bandits in the Northwest, they are just economic bandits. You see, they just want money, through kidnapping and ransom and just go. So you can't even negotiate with them, because like one lecturer at the Usman Danfodio University identified, I think 1,000 or so different camps of bandits within a few local governments of Zamfara state. So they don't have a central command. In fact, right now the story you get out of Zamfara is that they are even fighting among the different groups. Even though Boko Haram also split into two and were fighting. So there is some difference. But the terminology is not the important thing. Whether you call them bandits or you call them terrorists, the important thing is what do you do to combat them and wipe out this scourge. It's a terrible scourge.
And what can we do differently then?
I'm not a security expert. But I believe that if the government taps into the experience and capacities of people internationally who have the knowledge and the skills and the tools to address this problem, because this kind of things happened in some countries. It's not Nigeria is not the first country to suffer from this. We used to hear of the bandit queen in India, who was ransacking villages. After a time, the Indians were able to kill her and exterminate the scourge. We also saw dacoits in Indian films. You don't hear much about them now. So there is expertise in some parts of the world, plus the necessary tools, intelligence tools, military tools, and you tap into everything. Seek the help of anyone who has the necessary skill and material to help us, because otherwise, if we continue along this path, our economy will collapse and our society will fracture completely.
Mr. Mahmud Jega, thank you for being on Arise Prime Time.
Thank you very much.